Senate doing the unthinkable for unthinkable reasons. I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.Media. You know the old saying, truth is stranger than fiction? Well, we've got that right now with a story coming out of the Senate that is an attempt to block openness and transparency. Yes, that's right. The Senate of Canada, which is an unelected, unaccountable body that is currently going through a credibility crisis, an accountability crisis over $1 million plus in misspent money over the last several years. You've got the Duffy trial, Wallen coming out, Mac Harb, Patrick Brazeau, all of that's happening. And then you've got the senators that are still sitting who are having their expenses questioned, some probed by the RCMP. And that was all allowed to happen because the Senate had lax rules. They didn't have oversight. Well, right now there's a bill before the Senate. It's passed the House of Commons already. It's called Bill C-377. It was brought in by Conservative backbench MP Russ Hebert to try and bring about some disclosure for the millions of Canadians who belong to unions but don't really know what's done with their dues money. See, right now in Canada, unions are allowed to collect dues money from workers' paychecks every week, every 2 weeks. You don't even have to belong to the union. You just have to work in a unionized environment, and you have to pay the union dues. But after that, and after you've claimed the tax deduction, and after they've collected their billions, tax-free, yes, that's right, unions don't pay taxes. They get special tax treatment. They get the full force of the law behind them if you don't pay your dues. But after that, there's zero accountability for members. And so union members have been complaining for years that the union bosses are misspending their money and they have little recourse. So the Conservative backbench MP Russ Hebert brought forward a bill that would bring in the type of disclosure that American unions have been operating under since 1959. Yeah, legislation in the United States that was supported by then Senator John F. Kennedy. But Liberals and New Democrats, unions, and several provinces are opposed to it. So now, after the bill has passed the Senate, or passed the House of Commons, the unelected, unaccountable Senate may block it for a second time. A couple of years ago, they gutted the bill with amendments and sent it back. It is back before them now, but instead of voting on it, they might just talk out the clock. That's right. A group of mostly Liberal senators, but also Conservative Senator Diane Bellemare, want to block this bill from ever becoming law. And if they can talk the clock out, then the bill won't pass before the Parliament breaks for the summer. It won't come back. Then we'll have an election. And they're hoping that they can stop this from happening. But let me read to you what Diane Bellemare, this Conservative senator that you've never heard of before, this is what she said about why the Senate needs to block C-377. I would like to say that at this difficult time, when the Senate is being accused on all sides of not playing its role as a chamber of sober second thought and of not taking the interests of the people it represents seriously, I urge you to vote in line with your constitutional obligations, the official positions of your respective governments, in other words, the provincial governments and the people they represent, and all of the emails you received that have criticized this bill as being too invasive. So, a senator in an organization that is facing accusations of misspending because they didn't have proper oversight wants to block unions from having the proper oversight that they need. Now, I can tell you from having covered the committee testimony that these senators have heard from union members that have had to take their own unions to court to find out how their dues money is spent. We've had the Charbonneau Commission in Quebec where money was used, I believe it was $1 million, was used from one union to help rebuild a strip club for the Hells Angels after the old strip club burned down. Yeah, that's how union money is being abused in Canada. They found the same thing in the United States years ago. They found the same thing on Australia recently. They're bringing in or have brought in proper disclosure, but not in Canada. Not in Canada, where they also want to do away with the idea that you should have a secret ballot on whether you actually get to vote to join a union or get rid of a union. No secret ballots for that, no secret voting. Do it the old-fashioned way, like we did in Canada in the 1860s. Unions have an inordinate amount of power, and that is power based on legislation that was passed years ago that didn't foresee, or maybe it did and they turned a blind eye to it, problems in how the billions collected is being spent. Right now, unions across the country are spending a lot of money to try and make sure this current government is defeated. Is the current government anti-union? No. They've simply brought in the types of disclosure laws that union members themselves have asked for, or they've attempted to. But right now, the Senate is trying to block it, and there's a conservative senator at the fore of that, Dianne Bell Maher. Shame on her, and shame on the rest of the senators who, in trying to find a reason for themselves to exist after these last few months of shame brought upon them by their own inability to be open and transparent, want to shield union bosses from the type of openness and transparency they so desperately need.